Hi, my name is Nathan Semitsides, and I'm from Exertion Games Lab in the Human-Centered Computing Department of Monash University. Thank you for joining. In this talk, I will be presenting our project called Dozer and explaining what Dozer taught us about designing closed-loop wearables for sleep. So to begin, I think we can all agree that getting to sleep is often very difficult. So even for people who don't suffer from some clinical sleep-related pathology like insomnia, a lot of us, myself included, often struggle to fall asleep. And whether that's due to poor sleep hygiene, life stresses, or chaotic routines, approximately 14% of people suffer from difficulties in falling asleep. And while pharmacological solutions exist, their use often comes with an assortment of issues, such as negative side effects, dependency, or just not working for some people. So naturally, researchers have looked towards technological solutions to address issues with sleep onset. However, currently, most sleep technology focuses on sleep tracking, which is great for things like diagnosis or for getting feedback on your quality of sleep. However, you probably could imagine that while you're trying to fall asleep, stats and graphs of your sleep quality over the past few days don't help you very much in the moment. And so generally, in the context of trying to fall asleep, people find these technologies frustrating. And so it sounds like the ideal technological solution would be some sort of system that actually evokes sleep. And there currently exists research exploring how to design such systems. However, existing implementations are not conducive of good sleep, but usually because they need some sort of screen or other feedback modality that the user must pay attention to in order to get the desired effect. However, there has currently been a lot of work done in neuroscience exploring rhythmic stimulation from things such as sound or electricity, and these being able to entrain specific neural firing patterns in the brain. And so we believe in combining these with biosensing and feedback systems that we mentioned earlier. And as a probe to explore the design of such systems, as well as the user experience such systems might afford, we developed and evaluated a novel closed-loop wearable for sleep we call Dozer.
These days, many people suffer from hectic lives that lead to a lack of sleep, as they are often missing out on opportunities to get those important naps. To address this, we designed Dozer. Dozer is a wearable closed-loop system that processes electroencephalography data, also known as EEG, from our brain to detect drowsiness. It then uses electrical and auditory stimulation to accelerate sleep onset, as both types of stimulation are known to induce sleep-related brain activity. Dozer is worn like a regular beanie and switched on in a context where the wearer would like to fall asleep. Electrodes are present at the back of the beanie to sense if the wearer is drowsy. Once the system detects drowsiness, the electrical and auditory stimulation is turned on, helping you fall asleep at the most opportune moment.
So through analyzing the interviews using thematic analysis, the results presented us with three major themes underlying the user experience of Dozer. So these being closed-loop neurocentric agency, awareness of feedback, and awareness of hardware. So the theme of closed-loop neurocentric agency concerns participant experiences relating to being in a closed loop, with the system both sensing and stimulating them. Generally, participants place emphasis on the system stimulating rather than sensing, and often voice an experience of feeling congruence between their inner experience of how sleepy they were feeling and the initiation of the stimulation. As a result, participants experience a sense of agency despite the fact that they couldn't consciously control the system. Due to these mechanisms, participants trusted that the system knew best when to send them to sleep, an experience that was compounded by the knowledge it was being activated by their own brain activity. The theme awareness of feedback concerns how feedback regarding what the system and their brain were doing, or lack thereof, influenced the participant's experience. So due to the ambiguity of the system's function and the absence of UI and its black box design, participants consistently reported anxiety over whether the system was working correctly or not, as there was no way of telling until the stimulation began. So, paired with this came a feeling of apprehension towards the upcoming stimulation, with many participants explaining that they were constantly thinking about when and whether it will come. And this led to rumination and metacognitive feedback loops of intrusive thoughts that kept participants up, thinking about thinking. And the theme awareness of hardware concerns how participants' experiences were heavily shaped by the physical design of the system and how they perceived it in relation to their body. So generally, participants found that issues with the system's wearability made it difficult for them to fall asleep. So this was mainly due to the amount of hardware in the beanie, the spikiness of the dry electrodes, and the warmth that came with wearing a beanie to bed. Similarly, participants limited their movement due to their perceived fragility of the system, stating that they were careful with their head movements. And participants also recounted that they were willing to sacrifice their own comfort for the sake of data quality. So, for example, lying directly on the electrodes because they thought it would make better contact with their head. Taking these results into consideration together, it appears Dozer failed at its desired goal of accelerating sleep onset, with participants instead falling asleep in spite of the system rather than with the help of the system. And that while users experienced a high sense of agency, their uncertainty towards what the system was doing, compounded with anticipation toward the coming stimulation, and coupled with the constant reminder of the beanie's presence due to some challenges with its wearability, ultimately combined to create a stressful, sleepless experience. Through interpreting participant experience, we also noticed that they aligned quite closely with one of our earlier UX frameworks, the framework of bodily integration, which attempts to provide a design space of systems which integrate with user physiology through bidirectionally sensing and actuating bodily processes. So in considering Dozer through the bodily integration framework, we can say that the user experience of Dozer provided a high sense of bodily agency, but a low sense of bodily ownership. A system exhibiting these properties usually provide the user with an experience of having a telebody, with systems often exemplified by telepresence robots. So what this means for Dozer is that it seems participants experienced a disconnect between the system and their body. So with this considered, it appears that future designs of closed-loop wearable sleep systems should instead strive to aim for the super body user experience quadrant, with a high sense of bodily agency and high bodily ownership, allowing the system to be experienced more as an extension of the user, leading to less sleep disruptions. With this considered, we articulated a set of design tactics to help designers actualize this in future systems. These being consider personalisable feedback, consider ramping stimulations for lower perceptibility, and consider balancing wearability to lower physical awareness of hardware. Personalisable feedback may be greatly beneficial to increase a sense of bodily ownership in future closed-loop sleep wearables. So participants mainly wanted some form of feedback to confirm that the system was actually functioning properly. We suggest providing users with a means of optionally accessing information about the system or themselves through some form of feedback which can be tuned down or deactivated once the user builds trust or competency with the system. We also suggest using localized sensations as feedback modalities, as Mueller et al. Have suggested this to be more conducive of systems with a higher sense of bodily ownership. We also suggest ramping any stimulations or feedback provided to the user. So participants often found the sudden activation of stimulation to be disrupting. So slowly turning up the intensity over time will make for a less jarring experience. And we also suggest to allow participants to adjust how slow this ramp is. Now finally, closed-loop systems can be difficult to contain in a wearable form factor due to the necessity for the system to house both sensing and actuating capabilities. Usually designers may need to prioritize between quality data collection and wearability. In the context of closed-loop sleep wearables, we suggest prioritizing wearability above all, as poor wearability may disrupt the benefits gained from prioritizing stimulation and data collection capabilities. And with that, we conclude by saying that falling asleep is hard, but designing for sleep is harder. But by following our tactics learnt from the challenges that faced us during the design of Dozer, we hope future designers may learn from our experience and work towards a better closed-loop wearable sleep system.